This is going to be a guide on evaluating oral history. This guide is adopted from the guide Making Sense of Oral History, which is part of the Making Sense of Evidence series on History Matters, the U.S. survey on the web. This series was created by the American Social History Project Center for Media and Learning at the City University of New York and the Rory Rosenweg Center for History and New Media at George Mason University. This specific guide was written by Linda Shopes, who is a historian at the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission, the co-editor of the Baltimore book, New Views of Local History, and the past president of the Oral History Association. Oral history has considerable value, but is not an unproblematic source. Because oral history is concrete and immediate, it seduces the audience into taking it literally. Oral history is not something almost beyond interpretation or accountability. It is not a direct window on the feelings or the meaning of past experience, simply because of its immediacy and emotional resonance. Regarding it as such is participating in anti-history, which is a term coined by Michael Frisk, historian and author of A Shared Authority, Essays on the Craft and Meaning of Oral and Public History. As with any source, you have to exercise critical judgment when approaching oral history. Essentially, just because someone says something is true doesn't make it true, and just because someone was there when something happened doesn't mean they fully understand what happened. Oral history is also not another source to be evaluated unproblematically like any other historical source, and it is not raw data or more evidence. Regarding it as such is participating in more history, which is another term coined by Michael Frisk. The first step in approaching an oral history is considering the reliability of the narrator and the verifiability of the account. So consider the narrator's relationship to the events in discussion, their personal stake in presenting a particular version of the events, their physical and mental state at the time of the events and at the moment of narration, the overall attention and care the narrator brings to their narration, and the consistency of the narrator's account. The second step is gauging veracity. You can do this by comparing the account with other accounts and other related documentary evidence. If the account agrees with, builds upon, or supplements other evidence logically and meaningfully, you can assume a certain level of veracity. If the account conflicts with or is inconsistent with other evidence, you can account for the disparities. Here are some disparities to consider. Were different narrators differently situated in relationship to the events? Did they have different agendas which led them to telling different versions of the same story? Are the written sources on the subject biased or limited in a particular way? Did intervening events such as ideological shifts influence memory? Inconsistencies and conflicts among individual accounts and between accounts and other evidence point to the inherently subjective nature of oral history. This can easily be perceived negatively. However, subjectivity can also provide a lot of value, which I will touch on in a second. So we've talked a lot about what oral history is not. Let's talk about what it is. Oral history is sometimes inaccurate and imprecise information or even falsehood entirely. However, there is value which lies in social memory. Social memory is not an exercise in finding facts, but in understanding experiences and memories of an event. Oral history draws upon linguistic conventions and cultural assumptions of the narrator and is therefore an expression of identity, consciousness, and culture. Oral history is an act of memory, which means it is shaped as much by the moment of telling as by the history being told. So some questions you can explore is, what does the narrator choose to say or not say? How do they choose to say it? Oral history is in response to a particular person, a set of questions at times. Oral history is a demonstration of the narrator's inner need to make sense of an experience, which is a very human need. In conclusion, when approaching an oral history, ask yourself, who is saying what, to whom, for what purpose, and under what circumstances?